Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Outliers YouTube channel and our program, Get to Know. I'm your host, DP Lyle, and I'm here with my partner in crime, Kathleen Antrim.
Thanks, Doug. It is terrific to be here for yet another fantastic interview. And today we have a special guest. Doug and I have known this man for a very long time. He is a New York Times bestselling author of 28 books. His name is John Gilstrap. He's one of my favorite authors. Welcome, John. It's great to have you.
Great to be here. What a pleasure.
So I'd like to start with a question about your childhood.
Ooh.
So I have this theory about this, and the question is, do you think that your childhood contributed to you becoming a writer? And if so, how? Were you an introverted child, an extroverted child? Did you spend a lot of time reading, imaginary friends, all of the above?
That's a really interesting question. Yeah, I don't know that I was introverted necessarily. But I was never an athlete, right? That was never in the genes. I was sort of the natural storyteller. When we would go and we did a lot of guns and cowboys and Indians and that sort of stuff, and I was always the one who was the story builder for that. Some of my earliest memories were writing stories. I just always loved it. But I don't know that I didn't have a traumatized childhood, so it's not like the events of my childhood feed the stories, but I've always written them, if that makes sense.
Did you play alone a lot and make up your own stories that you were starring in, or did you have a lot of friends?
Well, we lived in suburbia, so there was the cluster of friends that were, more or less the same age, and we more or less got along. And on the days that we didn't, I had my GI Joes, and I had I had an excellent machine gun sound that I could do with when they're shooting each other and that kind of thing. But no, I was not a loner by any means, but I was not afraid of alone time either. It was a pretty normal 1960s and 70s childhood. It wasn't until I got into high school that I kind of felt a little bit shunned, but then I found myself again. It was pretty normal.
So well, you ultimately went when you went to college. Was it William and Mary? Isn't that where you went?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, and you got a very lucrative major, American history.
Yeah, I knew. I just to hell with that business stuff. I wanted to make the real money and go into history.
But after that, you moved on, and you were a volunteer fireman for a long time.
15 years. Almost 16.
Wow. So,
how did you end up doing that?
Yeah.
Really, you want the long version of the story, and I'll shorten the long version. I was working through college. I was a counselor at a day camp for overprivileged rich kids. And on the last day of my last year, I guess I did it for 5 years. And I had my first job after college all set up to be the managing editor for Construction Magazine, which was a miserable freaking job. But I didn't know that yet. And a little kid, I was in charge of him. He was 12 years old, went running out onto this busy, wasn't a highway, but it was a busy road, 35-mile-an-hour road, which means that people are going 50. And he got nailed by a car. And he broke his femur, ruptured his bladder, ruptured his liver. I mean, he was completely screwed up. And I was the first one there. I heard the thump. And I went out there, I had no idea what to do. And I was there with him waiting for the ambulance. Of course, there's no cell phones or anything else. You have to send runners to go to do things. And, I don't know how long, it felt like an hour, but, obviously it wasn't. And that moment of helplessness, I was never going to do again. So I enrolled in an EMT program. And that then led to hospital rotations and ambulance ride-alongs, and that's how I got into the fire service. And then after, it's kind of a EMS purist for a while, and again, this is like 1980, so there were no paramedics in Virginia at that time. So it actually was advanced first aid was all that was required to run an ambulance then. So
Wow.
I was like royalty with an EMT, but I got puked on too many times. So I kind of switched over to the fireside after a few years. And so I did that, but I was always working in the getting paid. I never made a dime off of, God knows how many thousands of calls, but I never got a dime for those. So I ended up leaving the writing thing. My boss was a drunk. It was awful. So I ended up finding out through the fire department, there's a thing called a safety engineer. Who knew? So I started to go to school part-time, got a master's degree ultimately in safety engineering. And during the program, I got hired on to be the safety manager. Well, worked my way up. I was a junior engineer, I guess, when I first started, whatever the title was, at an explosives manufacturing plant in
Wow.
in Prince William County, Virginia. And then that led to that, and that level of expertise. And then when we found some stuff we probably shouldn't have buried back in the 60s, but had to dig up, I became a hazardous waste expert kind
Sure.
of by design. So, and all the while that I'm doing that, I'm also writing stories in the background because I never stopped doing that. So there's a lot of careers that all ran parallel to each other.
So interesting. So you were still like writing at nights and on weekends and
Yes.
wow.
Yeah.
So
Some people tinker in their garage and I was just writing stories.
Yeah.
were you trying to publish then, or were you just, writing for yourself basically?
Just for myself. It's not that I have a desire to be published. I mean, what kind of idiot thinks you can actually sell a story? It's,
Well, no, apparently there's three of us here, but what happened that made you say, I think I can get these things published and I'll take a shot at that? What stimulated that?
I wrote 3 full-length novels and none of them were any good. I didn't like them. First of all, I'm a voracious reader and less so now, quite honestly, than I used to be. But back then, I don't know, 2 books a week, 3 books a week. I don't know.
Wow.
And the books that I was writing just weren't of the same quality as what I was reading. And I didn't know what was wrong, but I knew that it was something. And when I finally wrote the book that became Nathan's Run, which was my 4th book, which was the first book that sold, something clicked. And I know what I think clicked. In fact, what I know clicked was I stopped trying to be important. I just told the story kind of like I would tell it to a friend using the vernacular that I would use, not writerly vernacular, but just conversational vernacular.
Mm-hmm.
And when I read that story, when it was done, I liked it. And I had never liked the others before. It just resonated with me. So that was the first time I thought, well, maybe I should try to sell this. Yeah. And so that was it. It was just really my own quality control check.
Yeah, you found your voice, and those of us that teach writing, we always emphasize the single most important talent that you can develop is to write your story your way in your voice. That has a chance to sell, and you're a living example of that.
And you're absolutely right. But what's weird about that, Doug, is I didn't have that vocabulary.
Right.
Because I was completely self-taught. It wasn't until, and I teach workshops as well now, but I didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't know what I didn't know. And then when I finally learned it, I still didn't know what I knew. Right. It was just kind of, it worked.
And that makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense. Yes.
When so many writers start, many of us, I mean, I remember myself, I didn't even know anybody in publishing. I didn't know any writers. I didn't know where even to begin to learn, what I was doing right, what I was doing wrong, where do you even go? So I think the first thing I did was went to Barnes and Noble and bought a book on writing, but
probably Saul Stein.
Yeah, you're right. But still, it takes years to learn how to write a novel. But one of the reasons we've created Outliers Writing University is to try to bridge that gap throughout the years and complement in-person writing conferences. But it's funny because you're right. You don't even know what you don't know. And you don't know who to ask.
Right. And it's like, you don't know how to form the question because you don't really know what you're looking for.
You don't know enough to ask a question. Exactly.
I remember vividly being it must have been high school when I read The Day of the Jackal by Frederick Forsyth and loved the book. And it's the first time that I saw what turned out to be structure, but I saw how he used what turned out to be space breaks, but I
Right.
just saw that how when the way he would switch characters back and forth
Right.
right at cliffhangers, and he made this kind of a compulsive read. And at the time, of course, because I was always writing, and it gave me something to kind of copy, to emulate in my own writing, and
Sure.
which turned out to be pacing, right? So it was, it's kind of, actually I get a chill talking about this, because it was really exciting, because there's this voyage of discovery. And for me, it was Stephen King as well. He's the vernacular guy,
Right.
writing in very unfancy language to compel a story and get you completely bonded with a character.
Well, I had the same experience. Day of the Jackal absolutely blew me away, and I jumped into all those spy versus spy thrillers after that, and then I started reading Ken Follett and Higgins and, all those guys. But Day of the Jackal still remains one of my top 5 favorite books of all time. And I've read it 3 times in my life now. And every time you go, you learn something different. It's so well done. Like you said, the 2 characters. You got the 2 characters, they're on a collision course. You're just not sure when, where, and how they're going to collide. And I defy anyone to stop reading that book. And that's the beauty of it. And that's what you learn. That's what I learned from that. Yeah.
And the Jackal's going to lose.
Exactly.
I mean, De Gaulle was not
assassinated.
De Gaulle was not assassinated.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, what's your process? Would you consider yourself an outliner or a pantser or somewhere in between? I mean, how do you approach a new story?
I guess I'm more a pantser than the other. I start with a premise, and I kind of develop it, and the plot will develop with time. And then when it finally clicks, I don't always know what they're after.
Right.
It's almost like I start with set pieces, and I don't know why they're doing this, but it will ultimately come to me. And then when it clicks, I drop down to the bottom of the story, and I just kind of, it's not even an outline. It's kind of a stream of consciousness, verbal vomit. And so that it's there. If I can't forget it once it's written down, and then I go back and write it. But I don't do an outline up front at all. I used to, because not with Nathan's Run, because that was just kind of stream of consciousness. But then I heard that you're supposed to outline. So I tried that, and then it just didn't work.
I didn't like it either. Let me guess. It's probably around 40,000 words when the story clicks. And you say, I know what it is. I know what it's about. I'm on the right track, and I know where it's going to end now. Right? Yep. Takes about that long to live with those people and say, okay, I got this now. Well, what about series characters? When you write those, you obviously already have a built-in space. I mean, you have the character, you have who they are, you have who their sidekicks are, you have all that stuff in place. Does that help, or does it hinder telling the story you want to tell?
Well, in my case, I mean, the Jonathan Graves series, I think is we're 15 books into that now. And I decided very early on, partly after talking to Michael Connelly, that Jonathan Graves is not going to age. So nobody in his universe ages, which gives me the freedom. I haven't done this, but I can move stories around in time. So it's really episodic more than it is a series. They just star the same characters. So as a practical matter, there's not a lot of character development within the series characters themselves. And since he's a freelance hostage rescuer, that's his job, there's a full character development with the people he's rescuing. So that's really where the story arc goes. So it's, I don't know, it's kind of I don't know if it's a cheat or if it works. It works, right?
And a lot of people do that, and I think it makes sense. So do you find that, based from the first couple of books now to the 14th, 15th, and all that book, you've obviously moved in time. Technology is different. Communication's different. Everything's different. Do you just kind of say, okay, so what? I mean, we're not in 1985. We're in 2005, or we're in 2025. I mean, is that kind of how you do it?
Yeah. the readers just got to get over it. You know, we're going to roll with the punches.
Exactly.
You got to look.
Yeah.
You got to look at the copyright date, dude. You know,
Yeah.
it came
Yeah,
out.
exactly.
The first book came out in 2009, which meant I wrote it in 2007. So
Right.
technology was what it was,
Yeah.
and chances are they're using technology if it's like satellite stuff and what it didn't yet exist. So I was kind of guessing.
Right.
Probably guessed it
Mhm.
wrong. So it's fiction.
It's
And
fiction.
so
Yeah.
I don't sweat that stuff. And I have characters. I have Vinici Alexander is a character who's the techie. She does all the she's the internet whiz and the hacker, and she does all of that off camera and brings reports back to Jonathan about the stuff that she was able to do. So he doesn't understand it either, but she's a whiz at it. So it's a complete workaround on how to do the technology stuff.
Well, it's interesting.
So-
If you write techno, modern, military, or thrillers like that, you almost have to have that computer guru now somewhere in the story, because everything is based on this type of communication and this type of data, and you can't ignore it.
Well, no, and decisions have to be made right away on real-time technology, real-time knowledge.
Yeah, exactly.
So in the beginning, you kind of had an immediate foray into Hollywood. Tell us a little bit about Nathan's Run and your second book. I know also, were they both optioned? I think they were.
Actually, they were both purchased outright.
Okay.
Which means I'll never see the rights again. The contract language is rights are purchased forever and throughout the universe. It's actually in the contract.
So
Really?
they kind of anticipated Elon Musk and Mars and everything.
I don't know. I just thought, well, that certainly locks it down.
Yeah.
It just happened very, very fast. The Nathan's Run sold, golly, I think it was on a Wednesday. And the book rights sold on a Wednesday, and then on Friday, my agent called and said, how does it feel to be the most talked about author in New York? Actually, was how she started the conversation, which was pretty cool.
That's exciting.
And it was Nathan's Run sold like it was headline making and all. It was one of those. It was mid '90s, back when people spent stupid money on book rights. Yay! And she said, "What are you doing tonight?" And I said, "Well, tonight's Friday, so it's pizza and movie night." And she said, "Funny you should mention movies, because there were 7 studios that were bidding on the rights to Nathan's Run." And it closed at about 10 o'clock that night and ultimately went to Warner Brothers, who then never made the movie. So it was,
which happens a lot.
Yeah. And so after about 2 years on that, I got the call from my movie agent, who said that they're putting the movie into turnaround because the script they developed was just terrible. I mean, objectively terrible. And I said that, and I was a little pissed, right? Because everybody wants to see it was my baby. And I said, in a peak of anger, I could write a better script, and I've never seen one. And my agent said, "Well, can you do it by Wednesday?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Okay, I'll tell them." I hung up the phone and I go, "Oh, shit, I've never seen this. I have no idea what a screenplay looks like." And this is 1995. Right? And,
oh, wow. Yeah. It's not even like you're going to Google that.
No, and you can't. And now there probably was screenwriting software, but I didn't know that. So, so I get on my Word Perfect, and so I type out this screenplay, which was good enough to actually bring it out of turnaround and give me a writing sample, which then got me a bunch more, 4 more screen gigs for Hollywood. But anyway, so that was that. And then when At All Costs, which was the second book, came out, that was going to be Arnold Kopelson's next movie, and it was going to be Harrison Ford's next movie.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. You remember seeing that movie?
No.
Because it wasn't made either.
I missed that one.
Yeah.
It wasn't made either.
So then Scott Free was optioned, and 6 Minutes Freedom was optioned. There's another one. I forget. But anyway, yeah. So Hollywood's Hollywood.
I know. I think that writers don't realize that so many books do get optioned and never get made. And there's so many reasons why, Hollywood might option it. They might option it to make it. They might option it to keep it from being made because they're making something else like it. You never know. You never know.
Well, let me ask you this. When you were back and you were negotiating this thing with the movie, did they want the rights to your character?
Lordy.
Or do you remember that? Was that a topic?
Probably, but that was Nathan's run. It was a standalone. So
Okay.
Probably.
All right. Cool.
I don't know. You have to understand that that was the era where you say yes, because I didn't.
Right.
Yeah.
I was still getting past I have a movie agent. Where did I get a movie agent?
Exactly.
How did that happen?
How did that happen?
You were so new. I mean, you were just a baby. That was your first.
I was
You
3
had to think,
days
wow,
into
this is
having
easy.
a book contract. So
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's
well, let's
a
talk
lot.
about this then.
Yes.
Okay.
Great cover for number one.
Yeah, I love that cover.
Thank you. That turned out well. That comes out in August. That is the 15th book in the Jonathan Grave series.
Wow.
And that actually launches what will be, I think we're calling it Burned Bridges, which will be the first book in a new series that stars Irene Rivers, who is the long-term FBI director of the Grave series, who is, it doesn't end well. Her career does not end well in Zero Sum, without giving away too many spoilers. But so in this, the bad guys are very much the cartels. And a number of my books, a number of the Jonathan Grave books have taken on the cartels as the bad guys, because I think they are just really, really, really bad guys. I live in West Virginia, and we are, I don't know, we're the number one bad state for addiction. And it's just devastating what that does. And we have this flow of drugs that just keeps coming. And so I get to kill a lot of them in the book. That's
satisfying.
And that's always fun.
Now you live in West Virginia, correct?
I do, West by God, Virginia.
And you just built a new house there recently. I saw that, the progress of that, and congratulations on that. That's cool, man. That's cool. All right.
Absolutely. So in writing series versus writing standalones, do you find them both equally difficult? Is one easier than the other? Can you write the series faster than you write a standalone?
I think, a story is a story. And I think there are pluses and minuses to both. Right now, I'm writing this first book in the Irene Rivers series. And because it's the first book, there's a lot of world building that's being done. And I'm finding that difficult, only because what I do now, I know will have a ripple effect in books down range. So every decision really has to be thought about pretty carefully. So if I screw up something here, the ripple effect,
you got to live with it.
Painful.
You got to live with it. Exactly. Yeah.
But overall, I think telling a story is telling a story. You just kind of go with it. And because I write thrillers, there's always going to be gunplay, and I don't want to make this sound cynical at all, but you know how it is with any genre writing. The readers want something similar but different. They want a predictable ride that gives them a lot of surprises. And at the end of the experience, they want a safe landing. So they want to know that I'm not going to kill puppies. There's not there's not going to be that senseless act of, I'm not going to kill off a main character at the last second. It's not. So there is going to be violence, obviously, because it's a thriller and it's what I do, but it's going to be exciting, but I guess an exciting and safe journey. And that's my comfort zone. And So it's always writing within the same sleeve of story, but always with different stories. And I don't think it matters much if it's a series or non-series.
That's
No,
very
it's
well
true.
put.
Yeah, because you're
For
reading
you, what's the
what's
hardest part of writing a story? What's the component? I mean, is it dialogue? Is it set decoration? I call it, is it, what part do you have to struggle with? Because we all have gifts in certain areas of writing, and then we have things that we aren't as skilled or comfortable with. What do you find?
I call it the muddled middle,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
page 200 syndrome. You just get to that point where this is the worst piece of crap that has ever been written in the history of man. And every other idea in my head is more attractive than this one. This is a mistake. I never should have started it. I'm never going to find the ending. And just plowing through. And that's when, every writing day is kind of a chore, as opposed to that, wow, the first 10, 20 days of writing a new book, it's all excitement. And the last 10 days of writing a book is all excitement. Man, that middle 90, it's just really just a slog.
Well, that's so true. And you get, you've had 28 books. I've had 25. You do that on every single one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And the only saving grace is that you stop and say, listen, you idiot, you've been here before. Just write the next scene and shut up and quit whining. And then
trust the process.
It works out, or trust the process. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to new writers who are, just starting to look at the muddled middle and trying to figure
What's
out
a
how
single thing that you wish you knew when you started?
Yeah.
One thing. Wow, I wish I'd have known this before I wasted all this
time. That there are conferences. Well, I don't know that it's true back when I started, to be honest with you. But there are conferences where there are people who are willing to help. And there must have been. I mean, Thriller Fest wasn't around then, but BoucherCon certainly was. And I'm going to guess some of the other MWA type things were.
Right.
I had no knowledge of them. I had no, again, pre-internet. So let's project now, to today. Yeah. My advice to new writers today would be to turn off every naysayer that is out there. All the ones who are saying that publishers aren't taking new stuff. Everybody, there are 1,000 reasons not to write. And there, I don't know what it is about the denizens of the internet. They're miserable, awful people. Turn them off. And anybody who claims to be an expert in this, including me, if anybody says they're an expert, they're lying to you. We're all feeling our way through this artistic endeavor one way at a time. There are no rules. There are suggestions. And the suggestions that I offer, or that Doug, or anybody who offers, they are just what has worked for us. Exactly. It might be total dog poo for you, but and trust your system, what works for you.
Yeah.
I hear people talk about alpha readers and beta readers, and all I don't even know what the difference is, to be honest with you. But people, when you show your work to somebody else, you show something that you like and you show it to somebody else and the other person doesn't like it, whose opinion is right?
Right.
It's
right.
So why show it? If you're so fragile that somebody else's opposing opinion, because you're actually asking them, tell me what's wrong with this, which means that that's their mission, is to tell you what's wrong with it. If it's so fragile, you're going to let them break your spirit, then don't open yourself up to be broken. It's so that's a lot of words of wisdom. You asked for one.
Yeah. So you mean you shouldn't ask your mother for an opinion on the book?
Oh, ask your mom, because she's going to love it.
Yeah, exactly. That's
your mother's nice.
That's the one.
This is the greatest book ever, son.
Don't necessarily act on what mom says, but it's
exactly. But it does feel good. Yeah.
Right.
Well, I don't know. Go ahead.
So have your mom support your vision that your editor really doesn't know what he's talking about, and if he did, he'd write his own damn book. Who among us has not had that thought at one point?
Oh yeah. There is that. Yes.
But I mean, one of the best things about being a writer is we're always on the learning curve. We'll never be off the learning curve.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's important for writers to know that, we're always trying to get it right. And what is right is, the big,
Yeah. And if you don't enjoy the process, go do something else.
yeah.
Because every book ever written is because somebody sat in a room by themselves for hours upon hours upon hours and created this. And if you don't want to do that, you go do something else, because it won't work out well for you.
Yep.
You got to like playing with your imaginary friends by yourself.
And even if you do like what you do something else too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I know this is one of the problems. I know a lot of, I say young writers, I mean new writers, people who take this literary thing, I think too seriously. It's just a story. Family is more important than story. Earning a living is more important than story. There's a lot of things that are playing with the dog can be more important than story. Have balance in your life.
Absolutely.
Go out when you get out of school, go and get a job, not necessarily as a writer. In fact, I think that can be a problem. If you write technical manuals during the day, who's got any juice left to go home and write a story? It's all about balance. Have fun. If it's not fun, then quit.
There you go.
Yes, absolutely. Perfect. Yeah, if you're not having a good time, don't do it. Absolutely.
Because that'll show.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So you're working on a book right now. And did you say you've got one coming out?
Yes. Zero Sum comes out in August.
Cool.
That's awesome. Well, John Gilstrap, we've got to have you back on. You are a fantastic interview. So let's get you on the calendar to have you back for when your next book's coming out. And
I'd love that.
Talk more craft. Absolutely. And a little shameless self-promotion for sure.
What?
What's that? Well, my friend, it's great. It's great seeing you again. It's great chatting with you. It's been a while since we've sat in the bar and told lies. But I think, are you going to BoucherCon perchance?
I am going to BoucherCon.
I'll see you there then. I'm looking forward to that, and we'll tip over a couple in the bar. I think Revis is going to be there, which is always a trip. Yeah, we'll have fun. Sure. Again, thank you so much.
Yes,
it's been a real pleasure.
Thank you. I'm going to ask our viewers to please click the thumbs up. It helps with the algorithms and gets our interviews out over the YouTube space. And ask you also to subscribe if you'd like to see more of these interviews. And that way you won't miss any more. Doug, back to you. Anything else?
And we want to thank everybody from watching. And John, we thank you for being here. And this has been the Outliers YouTube channel and our program, Get to Know. We will be back with more interviews down the road. So until then, everybody take care.